Hello, my name is Mike Ligthart and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam and I'm part of the Social AI Lab. My research focuses on facilitating supportive long-term child-robot interactions. The context of this research is the HERO project, where we try to contribute to reducing stress for children with cancer during their hospital visits. The questions we are addressing, however, are relevant for the HRI field as a whole. Children's interest in the robot, and with that the effectiveness of the intervention, is initially driven by the novelty effect. The robot garners interest because it's something new. However, once the novelty effect wears off, children's interest plummets, as well as many positive effects the robot can bring about. In the field, we see many robot applications ending up in a closet somewhere, or worse. We need a new driving force. Perhaps experiencing a meaningful relationship with the robot can be a new motivation to keep interacting with the robot. The question then becomes how to foster the child-robot relationship. This is a complicated question that cannot be addressed in a single paper, let alone in a 10-minute video. Therefore, we chose 3 focus points. The first is to develop high-quality conversational content that provides a narrative development that caters to a multi-session long-term interaction. The second is to safeguard the continuity between sessions and between the child and the robot. The third is to highlight similarities between the child and the robot with the hopes to establish a common ground and a shared interest. Our vision for the interaction is to view it as a serial TV show. The conversation lies at the core of the interaction, and each session is a new episode with the child and the robot as the main actors. There is an overarching narrative between episodes, and within each episode there is room for a lot of personalization. We partnered with professional writers to create the dialogues for our robot show. To structure the dialogue design, we developed the concept of a mini-dialogue. It's a self-contained unit of discourse in the conversation, an equivalent to a paragraph in written text. It contains a list of utterances, some of which can be conditional on the state of the conversation, and it's templated dialogue, allowing dynamic adaptations to the conversation. More details can be found in our paper and auxiliary materials. A key characteristic is that mini-dialogues lend themselves well to personalize the conversation, which we'll explain more about in a minute. There are 3 types of mini-dialogues. The first are narrative mini-dialogues, who provide a story-rich conversation. The robot talks about its own objectives, for example to participate in the Robot Olympics, and asks the child to be its coach. Chit-chat mini-dialogues center around a specific topic, which can be tailored to the child's interests, for example the child's favorite food. Finally, there are functional mini-dialogues, like greetings and goodbyes. And using this conversational background, we developed a memory-based personalization strategy to make the conversation more personal, highlight similarities, and safeguard the continuity of a multi-session conversation. During this conversation, the robot would ask the child various questions about their hobbies, interests, preferences, and things relevant to the narrative. The answers to these questions are stored and can be queried by an artificial cognitive agent to select or adapt the mini-dialogues. The strategy has 2 types of manipulations. The first are memory references, and they include explicit references of things the child has said, for example their name, things they like, or other relevant things. Secondly, the robot can choose different narrative branches or chit-chat topics that matches with the child's interests and preferences. Thirdly, the conversation can also be enriched, for example with a personalized greeting in the form of a unique secret handshake, or provide an explicit motivation of why particular content is included, or foreshadow future content. Let's watch a clip of the memory-based personalization strategy in action.
Heel veel eten dat heel veel kinderen heel lekker vinden. Begint met een P. Zoals pizza, pasta, pannenkoeken, poffertjes en patat. Welke P vind jij de allerlekkerste P?
Ik vind pasta het lekkerst.
Fantastico. Wat vind jij eigenlijk lekker aan pasta?
Ik vind de saus die erbij komt het lekkerst.
Zo, dat klinkt goed. Hey Mike, gisteren dacht ik aan jou. En dat we het vorige week over je lievelingseten met een P gehad hebben. Ik heb opgeslagen dat jouw lievelingseten pasta is. Gisteren heb ik voor het eerst zelf pasta geprobeerd te maken. Dat lijkt me handig om te leren. Daarmee kan ik jou en heel veel andere mensen heel blij maken. Heb jij wel eens zelf pasta gemaakt?
Ja.
Cool.
We ran a longitudinal user study with 46 children between the age of 8 and 10, and they interacted 5 times for about 50 minutes, roughly on a weekly basis, covering a 2-month period. We compared the memory-based personalization strategy with the control condition, and the only difference were the manipulations we just discussed. We hypothesized that children would feel closer to, self-disclose more, and show more positive social cues to the robot that uses the personalization strategy. We also expected that children were more willing to continue interacting with the robot in the personalization condition. We measured self-reported closeness, the amount of self-disclosure, the observed valence of social cues, and the self-reported willingness to continue. And more details can be found on the measures and the methods in our paper. Let's look at the results, starting with the results for the willingness to continue. We see that in the control condition, the willingness decreases over time while remaining stable in the personalization condition. However, only in the final session this difference is statistically significant. Note that the willingness to continue to interact in general is high, so we can conclude 2 things. The first is that children in general like to continue talking to the robot even after 5 sessions. It is likely that the narrative design contributed to this, but more research is needed to investigate this further. The second one is that memory-based personalization does pay off after a while, where in the control condition children gradually lose interest, so something keeps them interested in the personalization condition. So let's explore if the relationship can be the cause of that. So we asked children to rate their closeness to the robot in the first session, in the third session, and after the 5th session. So after the first and the third sessions, the scores are not significantly different and do not significantly change. Interestingly, after the 5th session, the scores on both conditions drop significantly. We believe that this drop does not necessarily mean that children feel less close to the robot. It could also reflect a shift in how children evaluated the robot. At first, children might have rated the idea of a relationship with the robot as what could be, and later switched to rate it based on their actual experience closeness, as is. This is one of the key reasons why it's important to run these longitudinal studies. Important furthermore is that in the personalization condition children feel significantly more close to the robot. Let's look at the amount of self-disclosure we found. We found no significant effects on the condition and session on self-disclosure nor an interaction effect. This is likely caused by the relative rigidity of the questions meant to elicit the self-disclosures, and a more in-depth discussion is offered in the paper. The last relationship measure is the valence of social cues over time. We see that apart from the first session where the personalization strategy was not in effect yet, children consistently displayed more positive social cues in the personalization condition. They smiled more. To conclude, we see that the novelty effect is wearing off after session 4 or 5, which demonstrates again the importance of doing longitudinal studies. Personalization strategy contributes to fostering the child-robot relationship and supports their willingness to continue. And it appears that the child-robot relationship indeed is a new motivation that keeps children interested. This is further strengthened by a regression analysis we did post hoc showing that the feeling of closeness predicts the willingness to continue. How long this motivation lasts, how to further maintain and strengthen this relationship, and whether it translates well to other domains are questions we are currently trying to address in our research. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me or tweet at me, and see you around. Goodbye.